Viera from Moonbeam. Please come to the stage. Give him a hand. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. All right, let's see if the slides are up. There we go. All right, cool. Well, thanks a lot for the invitation. It's really exciting to be in Barcelona because I live in Barcelona, so it's the first event that I don't really have to travel quite a bit. So I'm here to talk to you about Moonbeam, and the title is Bootstrapping an Interoperable Ecosystem on Polkadot. My name is Alberto, and I work at Developer Relations in the project Moonbeam. So today, the agenda is going to be very brief. It's only 20 minutes. So we're going to start talking about Polkadot because I really like self-contained content. And so, we're going to talk a very brief intro about Polkadot and its architecture. Next, we're going to talk about Moonbeam. What is it, and what makes Moonbeam special? Among all the different EVM chains out there. And last but not least, we're going to talk about interoperability. What does it mean, and why is it important in today's world? I really like the meme on the right-hand side. It's a Doge meme. I mean, who doesn't like the Doge? And so the idea that Moonbeam is basically brings Ethereum developers closer to Polkadot, and that's why I usually include it in all my slides. But yeah, let's talk about Polkadot, and it'll be 1 minute, so you won't be an expert in Polkadot after my presentation, but the idea is to give a little bit of a context, because a lot of people don't really know what Polkadot is still. So the main idea about Polkadot is specialization and connectivity, right? There's no one blockchain to rule them all. There's no one blockchain that is best of all the blockchains. There are many best blockchains out there, and the idea of Polkadot is that it's called the relay chain, or a layer 0, and it's basically an idea of being a blockchain for other blockchains, right? There is basically Polkadot connects and secures these specialized blockchains that will connect to Polkadot. These blockchains are actually called parachains, and the term comes from parallel chains. And so the idea here is that you have specific chains that provide specific functionalities to a whole broader ecosystem. So you will see parachains, for example, specialized in privacy, parachains specialized in storage, in oracles, in bridges, and so on. And so Moonbeam is one of these parachains, and I'm going to be a little bit more detailed in the following slides. But Polkadot has one really important promise, right? It's not just another blockchain. It's basically a blockchain for blockchains. And so one of the promises is this connected security, meaning that when we projects connect to Polkadot, we don't have to worry too much about consensus, about which is the next block or what is the right next block. That is provided by Polkadot and its economic game or whatever. But the other main promise about Polkadot is XCM, or the idea that all these members of the ecosystem will be able to natively interoperate. And the keyword here is natively, because right now there are many blockchains out there that can interoperate with each other through bridges, but there's always a middleman, a risk, basically a risk network in the middle that you have to rely on in order to communicate. Within the Polkadot ecosystem, you're able to natively interoperate because you're already trusting Polkadot for consensus, right? So that is the two main promises that Polkadot gives you. And so now the question is, what is Moonbeam? Because the project is still very new, people are still getting to know what Moonbeam is. And so the idea here is, once again, to give you a brief introduction about what Moonbeam is. And so we know that there are a lot of EVM chains out there. You have Ethereum, you have Avalanche, you have Polygon, right? And so I wanted to make clear what makes Moonbeam different, right? We don't really want to compete out there because we think that there's a multi-chain future, but we want to show what Moonbeam makes it's different out of all these EVM chains. And so the first element is that we're built with Substrate. And what is Substrate? So it is an SDK that allows you to build blockchains really, really fast and really, really easy. And it's very modular. You can customize it really well. And so the main benefit that we see in Substrate is that we can connect to Polkadot quite easily, right? And benefit from this native interoperability. And so you can see here on the right-hand side how you see basically the EVM as a base layer building block out of an Ethereum-compatible blockchain, but we have added layers of benefits or features. The next feature is full Web3 RPC support. So for non-tech people, what does this mean? This means that you can actually use regular Ethereum tools or wallets. For example, you can use Ledger, you can use Trezor, you can use MetaMask. All these tools natively work on Moonbeam right out of the box, because we have a full seamless ETH JSON RPC support. And if you're a developer, this means that you can use Hardhat, Ether.js, Web3 Python, Web3.js, all these open source tools that are, people are used to working with them on Ethereum native chains, right? The next benefit is more against other parachains in the ecosystem is because on a substrate blockchain, you have the substrate account scheme, which is different than Ethereum's, right? So it's different than the typical MetaMask address that you see out there. And so one of the things that we did is that we modified the underlying account system so that it's all Ethereum. So this means that on Moonbeam, you will be doing staking, on-chain governance, and interoperability, but you will be using regular Ethereum address. This is to make it full Ethereum compatible. And last but not least, we have developer tools and integrations. So this means that it's an Ethereum dev-like environment, right, with expanded features. So the idea is to make developers feel right at home. They don't have to do anything. They can use Chainlink, for example, that I see marked here. They can use the graph. They can use Etherscan. So a lot of these tools that developers expect, they'll find it in Moonbeam. So composability. For me, this is one of the most beautiful things that it's out there on the blockchain, and Ethereum is probably the best example out of this. What is composability? Is that projects can work with each other and provide basically limitless combinations, right? We see this, for example, on Ethereum when we see, for example, Aave, when a person wants to use Aave and Uniswap or Aave and Sushi, and then you have also stable tokens like Frax, or you have derivatives platform and Curve, and a person can leverage all these different tools in a single transaction, in a single interaction or whatever, right? And for me, this is one of the beautiful things about blockchain, especially about Ethereum, it's composability. So one of the things that we noticed that to really offer composability, there was a lot of tooling needed, a lot of dependencies. And so that is why our team worked really, really hard into making sure that you have all the tools that people want and developers want in our platform, in Moonbeam. So that's why, like I mentioned before, as a developer, you can use the Graph and Covalent for indexing, Chainlink, MetaMask Ledger and Trezor, Etherscan. You have a fork of Gnosis if you want to use a multisig wallet, all the developer tools that you expect. But you also have then an interoperability layer that we're really focusing on just to make sort of like an interoperable composability that is powered either by XCM, so the XCM is that like the native Polkadot interoperability protocol, or also GMP protocols, and GMP is general message passing. Right, this is what allows, for example, Moonbeam to be communicated with Ethereum. And so we have, for example, Axelar, Polkadot for XCM, and Nomad as a few examples. So that's why we think Moonbeam will be sort of like an interoperability hub, not for only within Polkadot ecosystem, but communicate all Polkadot parachains to the outer ecosystem of blockchain. And so I talked before about EVM with expanded features, right? And what does this mean? And this is important because we're built with Substrate, we have sort of a modular approach that allows us to provide sort of extra features on top of the EVM. And so one example of this is staking. We provide a smart contract, so it's sort of like an interface where developers can do applications and benefit from Substrate features that are not really Ethereum native like staking. The example that you see here is basically the staking Moonbeam dApp, where you can actually stake using your MetaMask wallet. And because you use MetaMask, you can also use Ledger, Trezor, you can use Math Wallet, and other wallets out there. The next feature is on-chain governance. So once again, on-chain governance means that a precompile allows you to do governance features where you can vote on runtime upgrades and other stuff, once again using MetaMask. And this is an interface called PolkAssembly, where you can actually, it's like a forum-based tool where you can discuss ideas, propose ideas, and so on. And you can vote everything using your Ethereum wallets that you've used before. The next one is especially interesting for developers because it allows you to access the native token. So for example, Glimmer or Mover using an ERC20 interface. So the example that you see there is basically that you can add Mover as an ERC20, right? It feels weird because in the wallet, you'll actually see two tokens, like Glimmer there, and then when you add it as an ERC20, you will see Glimmer as well. But this is really cool for developers because they don't need to do the wrapping and unwrapping that you do on Dexes, for example. This is a feature that we actually released like past month, I think, which is a batch precompile. So it is a way for developers to batch a lot of Ethereum transactions in one single Ethereum transaction. And I don't know if you guys have ever used like a DEX that you actually, for example, to swap a token, you have to approve it, and then you have to swap it, right? It's usually a two-step process. Using the batch precompile, developers can actually do this action in one signature, basically. And this is really powerful because I don't know if you've ever used Ocean Protocol, but when I was testing it around, you had to sign like 5 transactions or something like that. And so the UX is not really great. So we really think that this will improve the UX in this case, for example. Last but not least, we have XCM-related precompiles. So these are smart contracts that allow developers to access sort of like interoperability features. And the first project that actually used this was Lido when they launched basically liquid staking for KSM and for Polkadot. And they actually did it through Moonbeam and Moonriver, depending on the chain that we're talking about. And once again, you do this from Moonbeam or Moonriver using your wallet, your regular wallet. So interoperability and Polkadot and XCM. So the idea here is that this is the current status of interoperability. In the left-hand side, you'll see Kusama, and in the right-hand side, you see Polkadot. And this is for the 4th of July because this is constantly changing. So you can see on the left-hand side, all these little dots are different parachains. Remember that parachains are blockchains in the ecosystem. And all the lines that you see there are that they're already bridges or like connection channels between these parachains. So you can see already all the interactions that is happening natively within the ecosystem. There's no trusted middleware there. On Polkadot, it's a little bit more recent, and so that's why you see less. There's actually quite a few dots, quite a few blockchains, but there are not a lot of channels yet. But we still see some channels with Moonbeam there. We see also Hydra, Kala, statements, or other participants in the ecosystem. And the main use case right now that we've seen is basically remote transfers. And the way this works is that, let's say a user wants to bring DOT from Polkadot to Moonbeam to use it on a DEX, for example, right? So the way this works is basically that a user will basically just transfer his DOT through a special transaction to an account that is owned by Moonbeam as a blockchain. It is not owned by a single person or a smart contract or an entity. It's basically owned by the whole blockchain, and so the only way that you can actually move it out of there is through governance, right? So it's not easy. And so Moonbeam will actually verify that these tokens exist in this special account, and it will just create a new representation, basically a piece of paper saying, hey, Alberto transferred 10 tokens to this special account. And it's going to create basically 10 wrapped representations. Another use case is remote execution, and this is what actually Lido is doing to be able to stake on Kusama and Polkadot from Moonbeam or Moonriver. The way this works, I'm not going to go into detail, but basically the idea is that a user using MetaMask, Ledger, or whatever other wallet will actually interact with the Lido contracts. And then basically Lido is going to empower, like it's going to use this extra features that we offer in the EVM to actually talk to Kusama or Polkadot and tell Kusama or Polkadot, hey, this user wants to stake 1 Kusama or 5 DOT or whatever. But the cool thing about here is that this is happening trustlessly and in a decentralized fashion using an action that started, an action that started on the blockchain by a single user using a single transaction, right? Which is actually a great user experience. And last but not least, and this is still experimental, but this is one of the ones that excites me the most, is remote EVM calls. So the idea here is that you have Moonbeam, for example, as a hub, as a core basically member of this remote EVM calls. And then other blockchains can actually, through XCM, basically call our EVM to do logic, for example, right? So you can see other projects like Centrifuge on Polkadot call Moonbeam's EVM to do some logic on certain smart contracts. This is actually something that we're actively working on, and we have sort of like a demo, but it's not public in production. So Polkadot and XCM. XCM, Polkadot plus Moonbeam, right? So the main idea here is to explain why we always look for Ethereum compatibility, right? So right now, if you're a parachain or you want to interact with sort of these like interoperable assets or tokens, the main problem for Ethereum developers and users is that they have to know Substrate. They have to know the Substrate API, and they have to know how to interact with it, which is not really something that is really common today. So the way that Moonbeam approaches is by basically adding an ERC20 interface, right, on top of the Substrate asset. So the Substrate asset is a thing that it's interoperable, that you can swap it around the ecosystem. But the problem is that, for example, you cannot add it to MetaMask. So we added sort of this Ethereum compatibility layer on top of these assets so that developers can interact with it using the regular Ethereum tools that they know and love, but also users can add it to like MetaMask or interact with it on DEXs, right? And this is a standard that we called XC20. It's nothing official, it's just a name that we put. And so the cool thing here is that, for example, in the Moonbeam dApp, you can add Polkadot to MetaMask, and you can see here that this user has basically almost 1.1 dots and can send it as a regular ERC20. Or the person can also swap it on a DEX and so on. Which, it's a really cool feature because if you've ever held DOT, you have to have a separate wallet, you have to have Polkadot.js extension, and it's really hard to interact with it and so on. And so the current status of assets on Moonbeam and Moonriver, so Moonriver is our blockchain, our parachain in the Kusama ecosystem, is that we can see that we have, for example, 92,000 KSMs in there locked in DeFi protocols, in DEXs, in lending, in staked, for example, tokens. We also have Remark, which is a pretty famous NFT project in the ecosystem. We have over 2.5 million remarks locked in Moonriver. And this is all, like I said before, trustlessly in a decentralized fashion without no relayers or middlemen. On Moonbeam, you can expect that it's a little bit different because the integration is a little bit newer. But nevertheless, we almost have 1 million dots already locked in Moonbeam. And we have so Akala, AUSD, and Parallel. But we have many more coming in the near future. So connected contracts, and I think this is one of the last slides. So this is sort of like a new approach that we're actually taking into this interoperable world. Because, like I said before, we don't think there's one best blockchain out there. We think that there will be many blockchains with many communities, many different developer communities as well. And so we think that it's important that in the future, there's sort of like this idea for developers and for users that users won't really see sort of like this, oh, am I interacting with this blockchain or this other blockchain? They will just interact with an application, and developers will have the tools, and that's the actual problem that we have right now, that the tools are not there yet, but developers will have the tools to improve the UX in a way that there will be interoperability that the user will really won't see, basically. So the idea here is that they can use Moonbeam as a hub, for example, to interoperate within Polkadot, like what Lido did before. But they can also use general message passing protocols such as Axelar and Nomad to also talk to other blockchains out there. So we're seeing one of these examples is that Axelar, I think it's a project, will actually bring DOT to the Cosmos ecosystem, and they will do it through Moonbeam. So this is one of the other use cases that we'll start seeing where projects are leveraging Moonbeam and this sort of like interoperability scenarios to actually move assets across systems, right? And the idea is that the user will just say, I want to move 2 dots to this Cosmos dApp or whatever, and everything will be taken care of for that. That's it for me today. I do have 1 minute. I don't know if someone has a specific question that wants to ask. But if not, please visit our website. You can find all the social channels there. Visit our documentation site if you're a developer. It'll help you get started. You have our Telegram channel, which is always full with people asking questions, our Discord, and our Twitter. I didn't put all the social medias that we have, but we also have YouTube, Reddit. So please visit our website, moonbeam.network, where you actually find all the social channels. You can find today's presentation on the QR code, but it's also very easy. It's at bit.ly Moonbeam ETH Barcelona 2022. So we actually have a booth right next door. So if you don't have any questions right now, feel free to visit there later, and we'll be around, answering questions, talking about Moonbeam and so on. So yeah, thanks for listening.